Yes, now that you've seen the cutting edge, I will show you the bread knife. So this is going to be a presentation about the management of cultural heritage underwater in Norway. My name is Bjørkeland. I work in Stavanger Maritime Museum. It's in the southwestern part of Norway. So I want to talk a bit about legislation, technical methods for data collection, case studies and applications, and challenges and future directions. Those of you who don't know where Stavanger is, and Rogaland, it's the black outline in the map. And this is just to show a simple overview of how we manage cultural heritage sites in Norway. So we get our assignment from the county, basically, and so our mandate is founded in the Cultural Heritage Act, basically, and we have our responsibility given by the Directorate for Cultural Heritage. Also in our region, it's the county that manage all cultural heritage, and underwater we also do the desk-based assessment, pre-disturbance surveys, and the excavations. So the legislation is quite strong, I would say, in general in Norway. It introduced protection of ship fines, including boats and ships and boats cargo, in 1978, and it has quite a strong polluter pays principle, which who are the initiator of the project. The legislation works quite well in the territorial waters, also in the contiguous zone. But we have seen now, working with more projects in the Norwegian exclusive economic zone, that it doesn't quite preserve the rights of the cultural heritage management to go in and access data from the companies that work in these deep water sites. So what we see, so the image makes it quite small, but the biggest zone is the one that is exclusive zone, that's out to 200, at a maximum of 200 nautical miles, and that will show the area that has some of the oil installations as well, and there are some deep water cables coming through, some of them going across the Atlantic. And this is the area where we're trying to access more digitized data, but basically we have to access it from the companies that are doing it, so we don't have access directly because it's usually at a depth of around 100 meters. And so now we're working with the companies, we're also working with the Directorate for Cultural Heritage to see how we can access these data. It's usually multi-beam echo sound data, sonar data. Some of the time it could be magnetometry to look for steel or other metals. So we do some of the data collection and the assessment at the desk-based basis before we go out. And we can also access some of the data from the companies themselves. So I was mentioned multi-beam echo sounder data, side-scan sonar. Also, in some cases, there will be autophotos that are collected specifically for those projects. And so these are our technical methods for data collection. And commercial diving is the one we use most of the time, which is quite well used, and we also use that for photogrammetry, and we use just by now for which I call registration. It's like pre-disturbance survey. We usually use just a GoPro basically, and we have been trying to increase this method to include ROVs. We haven't really found the best method to do it now, but we're looking at external services for that job. We'll go a bit more into detail about the diving and the ROV part, but we have been using with some external companies quite recently to enter or be able to use the autonomous underwater vehicles for deeper waters, especially in the Norwegian fjords. You have some of them going to depths of more than 400. So we have a problem with affordability, because seeing how our projects are commercial, basically, we don't usually have the amount of funding we need to do the projects with the more advanced AUVs, basically. So that's what we're working with now. And we have access to an in-house side scan sonar, which is a towfish basically that we use. I'll show you some examples from the site that I'm presenting. So with legislation, it's quite strict also when it comes to diving in Norway. You've seen all this deeper diving to 120 meters. We can't access that in Norway at all. We can only access diving in practice to 30 meters. We are certified to go to 50 meters through commercial diving, but usually we don't have access to enough people. And also the dive time you would have at those depths are not as practical. We also have to have a minimum of a 4-person team, which makes just doing the pre-disturbance survey is quite expensive by now, but just going out for one day could be up to at least 5,000 euros. And with that, we do try to get some of the sites, we do optional positioning. That's sort of when our digitization and underwater mapping comes in, because in some of the projects that are being developed, it's quite difficult to get the exact position of the diver, and when you have a find, you have to limit that find, and where the project limit is going to be is pretty much what we're working on now. I'll show you some examples. We do some of the times use scuba as well, not that often. It's limited to a depth of 18 meters, and we also have to use cable communications, so it's quite restricted. And it's worth mentioning that it's actually quite a hard limitation for bringing in people from different or other countries, because by now the work authorities in Norway, they don't acknowledge the European certifications that we have, or some people have had from before, so it's a bit hard, unfortunately, to do international cooperations. So for ROVs, we just have an in-house chasing. It's more like an underwater drone. So per now we have used external services, so we don't have access to all the tools you've seen from the university as well. I have heard people when doing the project in Selina, together with the university, people talking about NTNU in Trondheim. And if we're a part of that group, fortunately we're not. They have access to way more advanced both AUVs and ROVs and everything. Luckily, we will be working more with them in the future. So we are, with the ROVs, also working with getting more access to positioning on this, and it's quite hard to get a good positioning also, depending on the bathymetry of the site. So going into a case study, I want to look at Svåheia, which is a part of Egersund municipality in the south of Rogaland. There's a small red flag there down south in the region, but or in the county. But so what we're looking at methodologically to try to cover this area is ranging from actually walking on land, looking for the potential for Stone Age sites in shallow water, but by now it's also included snorkeling, shallow water diving, surface applied to 30 meters, side scan sonar, and ROV. So this is just an outline of the area that is where the project initiator wants to plan their project. Basically, it's an increasement of an area for windmills on land, and the blue outline is the project outline, or the regulation area, basically. So what is accessible before doing the actual survey is we have this multi-beam echo sounder data from the Norwegian mapping authorities, which have been applied for in advance. It can be quite a long process, at least 6 weeks to get the permits, but then we can use the data as sort of a planning tool for the dives and the survey using ROVs. It is unfortunately in Norwegian, but the green parts are the scuba ones, the red ones are the green ones are the surface applied, the red ones are the scuba, and the deeper red ones is the ROV on the southern part of the area. We already had information about at least one wreck in the site, which is one that says Hartlepools. which is a British sailing ship, iron-hulled. And I'll show you just some example from using the side scan sonar in the area. As you can see from the top image, it's quite varied, the bathymetry, so it's a bit hard to actually get a good image sonar. Like when you were looking at the pictures that were showed from the waters out here, it's quite flat, and this just shows some of the challenges we have with covering areas that are quite near shore. So this is probably the best run we've had with the sonar in this area, and we've pretty much abandoned using the sonar for this area because it's quite difficult when it's this rocky. So this is the setup for the deep tracker. It's just from a small boat. It's close to the second area where there's supposed to have been a wreck. We haven't found any parts of that wreck yet, but we have to go back. And so yeah, that's the rock in the back there we're supposed to have gone on land. This is just to show an example of the setup from a smaller boat. And speaking of murky visibility, this is an example of how it is this summer when we were just going there some weeks ago. This actually has the position of the ROV on the top of the image, so that's quite good to have when you're working in conditions like this. And this kind of shows, this is a pre-disturbance survey, but still it could be an interesting site for a photogrammetry in the future, but it just shows the challenges we have, especially with visibility. But also in general, accessing the site is quite difficult because there have only been a couple of days where there hasn't been too much waves, or the swell is too big, and you can't go out basically with an ROV or anything. So this is an image that shows the track for the underwater positioning, and it shows definitely some difficulties with actually getting the position in a site like this, because it's sort of it just goes from the depths from 0 to 50 meters in quite a slope, so that's difficult. You have to get a bit further out maybe. Problem this day, that was the one day that we actually had the possibility to go out, is that there were fishing nets just behind where we're doing it, so the pilot of the ROV didn't want to get close to them, so that's just one more challenge you have to have in mind. So, working with these challenges and future directions, we are working with an interregional focus group. We call it IRMAS. It's in Norwegian, so that doesn't make sense, but it's like we have a focus group with 3 museums who are working together to increase knowledge about the use of digitization and underwater registrations, basically. And we also work with the regional authorities and the Ministry of Digitalization and Public Governance have an ongoing project in the Norwegian economical zone, so that's why we want to work closer with them. And this also methods for data collection is pretty much just working with different units and working more with Heritage Malta. I think it's quite interesting, and to get more information about these sorts of tools to work in use in our management back home and for research projects in the future when we have the possibility. That's me.